Welcome in tonight to Rover Sports, and I'm going to talk about some of the coaching candidates that are out there, including Jim Harbaugh, Will Healy, and the coaches of the Jets, and all of those scenarios that we will talk about. So, For Will Healy, this is an interesting proposition, right? Because you got Will Healy, right? And it's an interesting proposition because you look at Will and he's a big guy and he's a good coach at that university. And where is he coaching? He's coaching at Coastal Carolina, or he's coaching at Charlotte. So you look at Will Healy, and the thing about him is that he's a good coach, and he could possibly take the Vanderbilt job if Vanderbilt offered him. Now, Vanderbilt's a private school. So the thing is about Vanderbilt is that it's private, right? So I just don't know if Will Healy's going to be able to recruit at an elite level. And I think Will Healy should get the Michigan job. I think he should get the Tennessee job. It's so weird to go into a job and saying, I want to take this job because I want to advance and eventually get a bigger job. I mean, I thought that's what Charlotte was all about. Eventually, Will Healy's going to get this reputation for always jumping. And he seems like a guy that wants to put his foot in the ground and actually build a program. And maybe he likes Nashville a lot, so maybe he wants to stay in Vanderbilt in the SEC. But I even think at Auburn, Will Healy would do better. Or at South Carolina. South Carolina's a public school. You can get some of the best recruits to go to South Carolina because you look at Vanderbilt, and the academic standards are just so tough that, again, your pool of recruiting is significantly hampered. You look at the private school, and they put a lot of money into education compared to other schools that really put money in the football. So, I mean, for Will Healy, it would be a job where he would take the job, and then within 2 or 3 years, he'd look to pull a James Franklin and then get to his final destination. Where if Will Healy was really good at Charlotte, then, to me, Virginia Tech, I mean, that seems like a place in Blacksburg. Now, I've never been to Blacksburg, but that seems like a place that maybe Will Healy looks at, and that seems like a place that Will Healy would want to build a powerhouse in the ACC, in a division where, Will Healy and that job, it just seems like it's better in Virginia Tech to build a power, just like, I guess, what was his name? Like Beamer Ball did it. I don't even remember the last coach that was at Virginia Tech, but he was there. It was probably Frank Beamer. He was there for, a very long time. I think it's the head coach. So, for Will Healy, that's a program that needs an identity change with Justin Fuente. It's really boring, that program, Virginia. So I really think that Will Healy could do an unbelievable job at Virginia Tech. I think Will Healy is one of the best coaching candidates in the country. I think South Carolina should go look at him. If I was Auburn, I would flip immediately for Will Healy. If I was the University of Tennessee, I actually think Will Healy is better than Hugh Freeze because Will Healy can recruit. Now, I don't think that Hugh Freeze is an awful coach. What he's done at Liberty, he was able to beat Alabama as a really, innovative offensive mind. He runs really good offenses. He knows how to recruit. Quarterback talent, he's very good at. He got Chad Kelly, Bo Wallace. I mean, he has passers and receivers. He has explosive receivers and passers when you look at that offense. I mean, he had Evan Ingram there, Laquan Treadwell. He had a lot of talent at Ole Miss, and I thought that he brought in Robert Kimdiche too. All of those recruits were obviously. I think he brought in like one of the best recruiting places, or one of the best recruiting bases in the country. So you look at Will Healy right now, he's the hot name out there, even though Charlotte hasn't played that much football. It's because what he did at Austin Peay. This was a team that hadn't won a game in 2 years, and then he went, I think, 1-11 his first year, only won one game. And Austin Peay was the worst job in FCS football in Clarksville, Tennessee. And what he did there to eventually get to like 7-6 and just fall short of making a playoff in year two, the recruits that he was able to generate, being one of the youngest head coaches, being a quarterback at Richmond. He might have even known Todd McShay when he was at Richmond. This guy, Will Healy, is just an absolute rock star. He's from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and has Tennessee roots, so that's why Vanderbilt could be important to him. But if he's a Vols fan, he should know that Tennessee football runs the state and not Vanderbilt. So, I mean, I know that he's at Charlotte right now, and I know that North Carolina, and there's other better programs in North Carolina. But Charlotte, like he said, is like a sleeping giant, and he could go out there and try to recruit and try to almost be Lane Kiffin. I think that if Will Healy even stayed put, I'm trying to think of, it just depends if Vandy's his dream job. For me, Vandy wouldn't be the dream job. I think Arkansas is a great place to try to build something. I think that I look at Kansas State. I would want like a rich football tradition, rabid fans that really, really care. And I think that Virginia Tech has like a much better fan base. I think they care a lot more about football than the people in Nashville that care more about the Predators first, then the Tennessee Titans. Now you might be adding in more sports teams coming to Nashville. You look at the Titans, their success. And again, I mean, you even have minor league baseball. You have Memphis teams. I mean, Vanderbilt is just, a great institution for higher learning. It's a wonderful school. It's in a great city. So Will Healy could certainly move to Nashville, and it could be great for his family. He could get a lot of money out of it. I just don't know from a football perspective, but there's a lot more people in his life. You have to analyze what his wife wants. For Vanderbilt, I mean, if I was to Vanderbilt AD, I mean, Will Healy is far and away the best choice. I mean, Jamie Chadwell is very decent. He would probably be my second choice, but Chadwell, you'd want to bring along with him the staff of Chad Staggs, of Willie Korn. That would be a really fun hire. In terms of running the triple option, I've never been a fan of that whatsoever. I absolutely hate it. It's like the two quarterback system. Couldn't watch Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech. I couldn't watch those games, so I'm just not a fan of that style of football. Let's talk now about Jim Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh, he's at Michigan. He's not exactly doing that well. He has some talented quarterbacks. I think Joe Milton's a talent. I think Cade McNamara's good. You got to pick one, and you got to stick with one, especially for the following year. Josh Gaddis is an all-right offensive coordinator, but if you don't like Josh Gaddis, you got to get rid of him. Don Brown is absolutely awful. Don Brown is a terrible, terrible defensive coordinator. Don Brown should have been fired a long time ago. You got to bring in you got to take a risk. You got to do some research, and you got to hire someone like an Alex Grinich or somebody that, is getting the job done. I think Hawaii has really good staff under Todd Graham. I really like the way that they play defense. And you got to hire, you look at the guys like Rocky Long has and San Diego State. You got to look at really good defense, Jay Norvell is certainly an interesting candidate. He's in Nevada. Him and Hal Mummy run, really good up-tempo offense as well. They had Carson Strong. They recruited Malik Henry. Romeo Doubs is one of the best receivers in the country. He's going to go to the NFL, and I think he can make some waves in the NFL and be a good NFL wide receiver. He'll probably go round 3. I mean, Romeo Doubs is a phenomenal player at 6'4", Carson Strong. So, I mean, for Michigan, they're sticking with Don Brown, Jim Harbaugh, and Jimmy's just been overrated. He's hard-headed. He doesn't really motivate the guys all that well, offensive scheme wise. He doesn't have that much innovation. And then from the quarterback standpoint, it's been awful. I mean, they had Wilton State. They then go out and get Shea Patterson, and they don't really, recruit anybody to really compete with Shea Patterson. Trying to think of who even the backup was to Shea. I think Shea played like almost every single game. I know that they had Joe Milton, but Shea was pretty much the guy that they rolled with at Michigan during that time. And they really haven't come up with great quarterback play. Wide receiver wise, I mean, they did have Donovan Peoples-Jones. Running back wise, they haven't had an elite running back. In terms of offensive linemen, I mean, they had John Runyon's son, but other than that, I mean, Cesar Ruiz is a player on the Baltimore Ravens, an interior guard. Defensive line wise, they had Rashawn Gary, but he really wasn't an elite college guy. Linebacker, defensive back wise, I mean, can't really remember or know any really good secondary guys. So just Don Brown is a massive disappointment. I mean, getting beat by Wisconsin that badly, Ohio State for 2 years. I mean, with Dwayne Haskins, that Ohio State team, you did have Chase Winovich. You did actually have good defensive players. And to just get killed like that against Ohio State at Ohio State, that was your one chance to really win. And Don Brown got absolutely pantsed in that game by Ryan Day, by Ohio State. The year before, Ohio State's quarterback got injured, but you really couldn't take advantage of Ohio State in that football game. So losing to Notre Dame, Shea Patterson playing awful football, it just all adds to it. I mean, Shea Patterson at Ole Miss was kind of a wild guy. You'd let him run outside the pocket, let him throw deep. And he really didn't develop at Michigan. And then you didn't really recruit anybody over Shea Patterson. And Cade McNamara has a lot of potential. I'd probably run with Cade because I think Cade can see the defense. I think he can get better. Joe Milton's a very high upside guy. So if you're going to stick with Joe Milton, even though Joe Milton just doesn't look like he reads the field all that well. So, and then there's just a huge defensive deficiency with Michigan. But the thing is, it's a COVID year. I don't know who you're going to get that's necessarily a lot better than Jim Harbaugh. You can go out and get Joe Brady. You can go get Will Healy. I mean, but Michigan's a stodgy place. It's a very tough job, really high expectations, tough academic school. And it's located in not the greatest fertile recruiting ground in a real cold area. So Jim Harbaugh has done a lot better than Rich Rodriguez. He's done better than Brady Hoke. He's done better than those guys that have come before him. I mean, he's at least gotten to great bowl games. He lost to Florida State in a close bowl game. Whatever bowls did he have? I mean, I think he might have made like a camping bowl or some kind of New Year's Six bowl, like some kind of Outback bowl against Alabama and got absolutely housed. So like some kind of camping road bowl. So you're paying him huge money, but yet it's Michigan. It's not to the recruiting level of Ohio State, of Penn State. And I know you could get Joe Brady. I know you could go ahead and get Will Healy, but, Luke Fickell's not going to take the job. I'm not really sure, do you want to hire Jamie Chadwell right now? Maybe. Hugh Freeze would certainly be a really good hire for Michigan, but Michigan's too stodgy to do it. They're too stuck in their ways to actually be good. They think they're good, but they're not good. And those are the most annoying those are the most annoying and obnoxious fans. I think the University of Nebraska, I think that they're humble people. I think that they're good people for the most part. But the Michigan fans, they kind of have an arrogance to them. The first sign of them winning, they love to puff their chest out. That's kind of Michigan football. They look down at Michigan State in the state of Michigan. And that's what Michigan's all about. So, I think that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, if Harbaugh switched up to defensive coordinator, I think Jimmy, if he can evolve, I think he can be a really, really good coach. But I don't know if he's ever going to evolve. Let's talk about NFL hot seat little hot seat, get this puppy to 25 minutes. I know I had a triple chin in the beginning of this video. Took a little while for the video to really get transpired, or it took a little bit of a while to get this video kind of off the ground and get it kind of moving into what I wanted to talk about. So you look at the NFL and you look at the coaches that are out there in this NFL, and Vic Fangio. I mean, what he did with Drew Lock and these quarterbacks, he didn't just nip it in the bud in terms of just talking about the COVID protocol and all of these different scenarios with this football team. Vic Fangio didn't exactly stop the bleeding in terms of Drew Lock and in terms of these quarterbacks not wearing masks. And the way that I would have handled it, I would have just said, hey, we're on to Kansas City. What's in the past is in the past. We spoke to our guys. We're going to be a more educated team going forward. And, I have their back, and I know that they're all good people and they made a mistake, but I'm with them 1,000% of the way, and we're going to be great the rest of the year. And our goal is to, not have any more cases and finish the season on the right note. And I have their back, and I have Drew's back, and I have Blake Bortles' back, and I have Mark Rippon's back, or Brett Rippon, and I have the back of the quarterbacks. I'm proud of Tyrell Hinton and everything that he's done. And I know that the quarterbacks going forward will be very cognizant about these rules this year, and it's all unique circumstances, and we're all evolving and learning, and I'm so excited for Kansas City. So with that, I'll take some questions. That's the way that Vic Fangio should have handled it. Instead of saying that these quarterbacks made a mistake, instead of saying, I'm going to find their ass myself. I mean, that's not sticking up for your guy, Even Drew Lock, even his parents are coming out saying this coach is kind of a jerk off. And the point is Vic Fangio is not sticking up for his players. When you're a football coach, these are like an extended version of your family, so to speak. These are your guys. These are guys that are on your team. These are guys that you need to check in with. And these are guys that you have to first get them mentally on the right page. First rule of a coach is getting these guys mentally ready to play, but also mentally engaged, and make sure that their personal life is decent, and try to check in with them as human beings first and foremost. And Vic Fangio is just not having a connection with these players. He's hiring old coaches. His offense is so bland and terrible. He hired Pat Shurmur. I want to get a coach that'll come in here and really help out Drew Lock. That's why Joe Brady's excellent. That's why the BYU offensive coordinator runs some of the best schemes in all of college football. You look at Coastal Carolina as well, and what they're running in college. You look at Sark, maybe Steve Sarkisian, except he's a pretty serious guy. But you look at Alabama, or you look at some of these, you look at Jeff Lebby and, some of these really good offensive coordinators. I think would be awesome for this NFL team if they would look into some of these guys. I would look at Joe Brady. I'd look at Luke Fickell. I'd look at Matt Campbell. Look at Colin Klein. I would look at several guys in college and in the league. Look at Shane Waldron. Kevin O'Connell, I think, would be perfect for Drew Lock in this offense. Kevin O'Connell comes from, the Washington Redskin coaching staff. KOC is a guy that I think could be a great, great coach, has a wonderful demeanor about him. I think the players will buy in. I think the players will love Kevin O'Connell. He's just as qualified as Zach Taylor, and I think he's going to make a great, great head coach. So O'Connell, to me, is a really, really good option for the Denver Broncos. Brady, O'Connell, BYU offensive coordinator. Those are the three guys that I would look at if I were Denver. In terms of Houston, I think Eric Bieniemy is a great fit. You look at what Eric is doing with this Kansas City offense, the innovation of his play calling, the evolution of Patrick Mahomes, fitting in all of these running backs into this offense like Edwards-Helaire, like Le'Veon Bell, creating motion, and he's a brilliant play caller, and he's done an unbelievable job, and it's looking like Kansas City's going to be the favorite again to win a championship. So Bieniemy, he heads down to Texas. You get Deshaun Watson, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You're going to get Brandon Cooks. You do have some roster deficiencies a little bit in terms of your draft picks. But I think Houston is a really good option because of the quarterback, because you still have J.J. Watt, a couple of guys like on the defensive side of the ball. I know the defense is getting older, but still, I think Whitney Merciless, Zach Cunningham's a really good player who's evolved to this NFL landscape. So I think that Eric Bieniemy would be a really good look at for the Houston Texans. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think Bieniemy also going to Atlanta. You look at Julio Jones and you look at Calvin Ridley, and then you're going to be drafting a quarterback in several years because Matt Ryan's in his mid-30s. Todd Gurley's an older back, but you now have McGarry on the offensive line. You tried to add in that guard Lindstrom from Boston College, so you've tried to address that position. If you fail to hit on those guys, you're going to be failing in a lot of ways. You look at Ed Oliver, some of the talent defensively that is on this staff. Some of these players like Alford, and I just think their corners are good. You look at, Deion Jones and some of these linebackers too. Atlanta has a lot of athletes, good players on that defense. And then you look at Julio Jones, who's one of the best receivers to ever play the game of football. I mean, Julio Jones is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he's still only like 33 years old, or I think he's probably like 32 years old. So Eric Bieniemy can go to Atlanta as well. I think Atlanta's a really good option. Arthur Blank's a decent owner. You're in an unbelievable city in the South in Atlanta, Hotlanta. You got the brand new stadium there. I love Atlanta. I think that'd be a great spot for Eric B. And I think that'd be a really good hire. I think that would be a good spot, good landing spot for Eric Bieniemy in terms of Atlanta or Houston. And then it's up for Eric B. I mean, it's up for him to hire defensive coordinators. It's up for him to run the show. We know he can call plays, everything around the operation. Eric B. handles that. He'll have a pretty good team, and he'll have some fun. So it's either between Watson or it's also going down to Atlanta. And with Atlanta, you even have more draft picks and more flexibility. You look at the Michigan job or the Detroit job, specifically the Detroit Lions. To me, it's Robert Saleh. This is a guy who grew up just footsteps outside of Ford Field in Michigan. I think he might have connections to the Marfa Ford family. Saleh's a guy that's going to bring a lot of energy. Everything Matt Patricia was is what Saleh is not, and everything Patricia was not is what Saleh is. Robert Saleh is an absolute player's coach. Robert Saleh is a guy that's gonna motivate the team. He's gonna lift with his team probably 4 times a week. He's gonna be jacked on the sidelines. He's gonna bring that energy and swagger to the Motor City that desperately needs it. You need a big personality to really resurrect, or not even resurrect, because the Lions have not even been risen. You look at resurrect, that word means get back, or that word means bring back from something that died, but there was never something there. So he needs to birth the Detroit Lions and birth their success. And I think Robert Saleh has that leadership, has that magnetic personality, and he knows the landscape of Detroit. He wants to be in Detroit. He's not going to leapfrog Detroit and try to go to another NFL team. That's where his family is. That's where his roots are. He can even hire Mike LaFleur to go with him. I think Saleh is a slam dunk for Detroit specifically. Now let's look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is a more complicated situation. You have an ownership that's very unstable. You have poor attendance in terms of people going to the football games. But you have a good defense. You have a lot of draft picks. So I think Jacksonville, I like that job a lot. I think Kyle Trask needs to be the selection at number 2 and not Justin Fields. I'm not a Justin Fields guy. The release is too out of whack. He has too much too much of a chicken wing kind of release in terms of his arm not being rigid into his body. He's not tall enough to throw down at the line of scrimmage. Tries to play, physical as a physical runner, but Trey Lance is taller, more wiry, more flexible. Justin Fields can throw the ball to the outer half. He can throw it to the sidelines, but yet Justin Fields doesn't know how to read in the middle of the field. He doesn't read inside out. All his reads are elementary. You also look at a quarterback who came from the same system, and Haskins didn't really translate quickly to the next level. Now, just because Haskins didn't translate doesn't mean that all Ohio State quarterbacks are the same. It's the same with USC quarterbacks. Just because Sanchez, Darnold didn't work doesn't mean that Carson Palmer, Keaton Slovis are all going to fail going forward. It doesn't mean that whatever quarterback's coming in there in 2021 doesn't mean that they're going to fail, because Carson Palmer was a decent quarterback too. So just because people fail coming from certain colleges doesn't mean they'll fail. But you look at Justin Fields, the release isn't rigid. He doesn't really have a lot of adversity in the pocket. Now, maybe he can evolve. You look at Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson has flexibility. Now, Zach Wilson was really bad a couple of years ago. His arm strength is not elite in terms of how far he can throw the ball. He can throw 45 yards, and the elevation is very tough to take into account when you're evaluating Zach Wilson at the quarterback spot. But Kyle Trask has dealt with adversity his whole life, has a good release, is very tall, very tough to sack, very elusive, has elusive pocket presence, an elite competitor. A guy that is going to have an even-keeled demeanor. I think Kyle Trask is going to be great for a long time. I think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback in this league. I really do. I think Kyle Trask, and you look at Trevor. Trevor's certainly a Hall of Famer. Kyle's a Hall of Famer. It'll be a good quarterback class. Trey Lance can be a really good quarterback for a long time. Zach Wilson will be a good quarterback for about 6 years. Mac Jones, I think, is a backup quarterback. He's a third rounder. He can't escape the pocket. He has great arm strength. He's great at throwing the football, but he's just like Bryce Petty to me. Really good thrower of the football, competitive, great at reading defenses, but he is not mobile enough to play in the NFL, and that's the problem with the Mac attack. But I like Mac Jones, great kid, just like Justin Fields. These are great kids, but I don't see them translating to the level that a lot of people in the NFL scouting community do. But anyhow, the Jacksonville job. Who's going to take the Jacksonville job? I think Robert's going to Detroit. So then if I'm Jacksonville, the way I'm conducting a search is you're probably not going to get Dan Mullen. I think that BYU offensive coordinator is incredibly intriguing for this Kyle Trask offense. Who is going to fit Kyle Trask? Who's going to be a great leader? I look at Kenny Dillingham out of Florida State. Florida State and Memphis, they've had one of the best offenses in a very long time. Kenny Dillingham's a 30-year-old guy. Unbelievable energy about him. He'd bring a lot of swagger to Jacksonville. He'd step in. He'd do an unbelievable job. He would be a ton of fun. You look at Declan Doyle from the New Orleans Saints. These are up-and-comers. You look at the guy from Miami. I think he's all right. He's a defensive coordinator as well. But to me, I look at Joe Brady. I look at Dillingham. I think you got to bring in somebody with a lot of spark, a lot of offense. I think Kevin O'Connell could be really good in this spot. You got to look at somebody that's maybe on Kyle Shanahan's staff. You got to look at somebody with excellent offensive pedigree. Maybe Nick Severini of the Colts. You look at Shane Steichen. You got to hire an offensive mind that is really innovative, that is very organized to really handle this. You look at Neil Healy of Ames, Iowa. Good wide receiver coach. Very interesting, has a ton of energy to him. So the point is, too, with Robert Saleh, he's not going to get hired. That's too close to the Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn tree. You look at Harbaugh for the New York Jets as a possibility. If I were the Jets too, you also look at a young offensive coordinator right in Jersey. You also look at the guy that I think is a great coordinator, and that, my friends, is Matt Campbell. He's a great head coach. But the guy that I was going to say is the coordinator of Rutgers. He's a really good offensive coordinator. The name is obviously escaping me, and I'm pissed off that it is. But listen, you got Cutcliffe maybe. He's a little bit older and drier. But you got Jeff Lebby that I've already said is a good coordinator. You could look at Sean Payton's staff and look at Dan Campbell. But that's a little too much like Gus Bradley in Jacksonville. Before the OC of Rutgers is a really interesting guy. So you just have to look around. You have to look at the D2 ranks. You have to look at guys like Zach Healy. Zach Healy is a guy that I think could be a really good coach. He's down there at Houston Baptist. He's running, triple option. He's running the spread. He's running what Texas Tech runs. David Yost. So there's a lot of guys. Steve Sarkisian runs a great offense. Hugh Freeze. So you have to figure out who runs a good offense. Who do you like? What style do you really like? Who's a great leader? Who's going to lead your program? Who's going to take advantage? And who's going to be a guy that checks every box? Can Chase Blackburn check every box? Who can be a leader? Who can institute an up-tempo modern offense? Can Kelly Dillingham do that? Can some of these other guys do it? Can Will Healy bring some energy? So there's so many great college coaches. There's so many, ways that you can go. You have to interview people all over, do a full-scale search. Have a short list of guys like Josh Boyer that you really like Patrick Graham is a great defensive coordinator. So that's what you have to have. You have to have a coach that sticks up for his players, and you have to have a guy that thinks along the same lines as you do, and that will make tough decisions. So 32 minutes, picked up energy late, had the triple chin in the beginning. Hope it was tolerable for the first few minutes before we hit our stride. See you guys later. Have a good one.